The famous singer smiled as she handed the microphone to a quiet boy. The crowd expected laughter, they never expected silence, and they definitely never expected a voice that would change everything. Before we begin, take a moment to support Black Inside 2.0. Stories like this remind us that greatness can rise from the most unexpected places. If you believe in powerful, emotional storytelling, subscribe and stay with us till the end. The theater was older than memory itself. Golden balconies curved like open arms around the stage. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling, glowing softly, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Every seat was filled, every whisper carried anticipation. Tonight wasn't just a concert, it was an event. People had traveled from cities far away just to hear Celeste Arden, the woman whose voice had filled stadiums, whose songs had healed broken hearts, whose name alone could sell out any venue in the world. Backstage, assistants rushed, cameras adjusted, the orchestra tuned their instruments, and standing quietly behind the curtain was a boy no one noticed. His name was Elijah Moore. He was 11 years old, slim, small for his age, wearing a simple white shirt that had been pressed carefully by his grandmother earlier that afternoon. His shoes were clean but worn, polished with love more than money. Elijah wasn't supposed to be on this stage, at least, not in anyone's plan except fate. Midway through the concert, after the thunderous applause faded, Celeste stepped forward again. She smiled, the kind of smile people trusted. "You know," she said playfully, "music lives in all of us. Sometimes, we just need a little push." The crowd laughed softly, her eyes scanned the front rows, and then they landed on Elijah. He sat stiffly beside his grandmother, hands folded, eyes wide, heart pounding. He had begged her to come tonight. He had saved for months from helping neighbors carry groceries, wash cars, and clean yards. This was his dream, to hear her sing live. Never did he imagine she would look directly at him. "Young man," Celeste said into the microphone, tilting her head. "Do you sing?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. Elijah froze, his grandmother's hand tightened around his. He swallowed, slowly nodded. "Yes, ma'am," he said quietly. The audience murmured. "Well," Celeste continued, her tone light, almost teasing. "Why don't you come up here and sing something for us?" The spotlight shifted, every eye turned, Elijah's legs felt like stone. This wasn't what he expected, but something deeper than fear stirred inside him. He stood, the walk to the stage felt endless. Applause followed him, not cruel, but curious. Phones lifted, cameras rolled, Celeste stepped aside, handing the microphone down to his level. "What song do you know?" she asked. Elijah looked at the microphone, then at the crowd, then back at her. "My mama used to sing me an old song," he said softly. She said it helped her feel strong. A hush fell over the theater. Celeste raised an eyebrow, surprised. "All right," she said. "Let's hear it." She stepped back. The music stopped. No instruments, no backup, just a boy, and silver. Elijah closed his eyes. In that silence, memories rushed in. His mother humming late at night after long shifts. The small apartment filled with tired hope. The way she used to say, "Sing like nobody's watching, baby." She was gone now, but her voice lived inside him. He took a breath, and sang. The first note didn't explode. It floated, clear, gentle, honest. The theater stilled. The second note carried warmth. The third carried pain. By the fourth, people leaned forward. By the fifth, eyes began to shine. His voice wasn't loud, it was true. Each note wrapped around the room, climbing the balconies, brushing against chandeliers, settling into hearts that hadn't felt this kind of sincerity in years. Celeste stopped smiling, her posture changed. This wasn't entertainment anymore, this was something else. People stopped recording, they simply listened. A man in the second row wiped his face. A woman pressed her hand to her chest. The orchestra members sat frozen, instruments resting silently. Elijah sang like someone who had known hardship, love, loss, and hope far beyond his years. When he reached the highest note, it didn't strain. It soared, effortless, pure, unmistakable. When the final note faded, the silence returned. But this time, it wasn't empty. It was heavy, sacred. Then, the theater erupted. People stood, clapped, cheered. Some cried openly. Celeste slowly stepped forward. She didn't speak right away. For the first time that night, she looked unsure. She placed a hand over her heart and whispered into the microphone. "I didn't know." Elijah stood there, breathing hard, eyes wide, confused by the sound, overwhelmed by the noise, unsure if he had done something wrong. His grandmother stood too, tears streaming freely. That night, a door cracked open, not to fame, not to riches, but to possibility. And this was only the beginning. The applause refused to stop. It rolled like thunder, echoing through the balconies, shaking the velvet curtains, vibrating beneath Elijah's feet. He had never heard a sound like that before. It felt unreal, like the world was clapping for someone else and he had somehow wandered into the middle of it. Celeste Arden stood frozen for a moment. She had performed on stages 5 times this size. She had heard crowds roar, scream her name, chant for encores. But this applause wasn't for her. It was for a boy who wasn't even supposed to be there. She looked at Elijah again, not as a novelty, not as a moment in her show, but as something she couldn't quite name yet. Something unexpected. "What's your name?" she asked gently. "Elijah," he replied, voice barely above a whisper. "And who taught you to sing like that?" Elijah hesitated. "My mom," he said. "She used to sing when things were hard." The words landed quietly, but they carried weight. Celeste nodded slowly. The crowd softened. Something shifted in the air. "And do you sing anywhere else?" she asked. "No, ma'am," Elijah said honestly. "Just at home." Celeste handed him the microphone again. "Then tonight," she said, "this stage was home." The audience erupted again, but backstage, behind the curtains, a different reaction was unfolding. Producers exchanged glances. This wasn't planned, this wasn't rehearsed, and it definitely wasn't controlled. One of Celeste's longtime vocal directors leaned over to another. "That boy just hit notes she hasn't touched in years," he murmured. Another shook his head. "That wasn't training, that was truth." Not everyone was impressed. Some faces tightened. Moments like this were dangerous, not emotionally, but professionally. Because raw talent doesn't ask permission. After the show ended, Elijah sat quietly in a corner backstage, swinging his feet, clutching a cup of water someone had handed him. He felt small again. The noise was gone, the lights were dimmer, the world had returned to normal, except it hadn't. Celeste approached him, this time without cameras, without applause. "Just a woman and a boy. You scared me up there," she said softly. Elijah looked up, alarmed. "I'm sorry," she smiled quickly. No, not like that," she said. "You reminded me why I started singing in the first place." She knelt to his level. "Elijah, has anyone ever told you how special your voice is?" He shrugged. "My mom said it made her smile." Celeste swallowed hard. That might be the highest compliment anyone ever gets. The next morning, Elijah's life changed quietly. No headlines, no viral clips, yet, just a meeting in a simple office with people in expensive suits who spoke carefully and smiled cautiously. Contracts were discussed, opportunities mentioned, but Elijah's grandmother sat firm. "We don't rush blessings," she said calmly, "and we don't sell souls." The room fell silent. Celeste respected that. In fact, she admired it. So instead of deals, she offered something else. Education, training, time, no pressure. No rush, just space for Elijah to grow without being shaped into someone else. Elijah listened quietly, and for the first time, he spoke up. "I just want to sing so people feel less alone." The adults exchanged glances. This child wasn't chasing dreams. He was answering a call-in. Months passed. Elijah trained quietly. No social media, no spotlight, just early mornings, late evenings, and a voice slowly learning how to carry the weight of the world without breaking. Celeste watched from a distance, sometimes proud, sometimes uncomfortable, because Elijah's growth forced her to face something she had avoided for years. Her voice had once come from pain too, but success had polished it, controlled it, packaged it. Elijah's voice, it was still free. A year later, Celeste planned a charity performance, small, intimate, meaningful. She hesitated before making the call, but finally, she did. "Elijah," she said over the phone, "would you sing with me?" Silence. Then a soft reply, "Yes, ma'am." This time, it wouldn't be a test. It would be a choice. On the night of the performance, the stage lights softened. Celeste stood center stage. Elijah stood beside her, not beneath her, not behind, beside. They sang together. Her voice was refined, his was raw. Hers told a story learned, his told a story lived. And somewhere between the notes, something beautiful happened. The crowd didn't compare. They connected. As the final harmony faded, Celeste felt tears she didn't expect. She realized something important. Elijah wasn't here to replace her. He was here to remind her that music isn't about perfection. It's about honesty. And Elijah, He walked off that stage knowing one thing for certain. His voice mattered, not because it impressed, but because it healed. The video surfaced quietly at first. A clip from the charity concert. 2 voices, 1 stage, no tricks, no effects, just truth. Someone shared it, then someone else, then millions. Within days, Elijah's name was everywhere. Not in bright headlines, but in comments. Who is this boy? That voice gave me chills. I haven't felt music like this in years. Elijah didn't see any of it. He was still waking up early for school, still helping his grandmother fold laundry, still singing softly while washing dishes. But the world had started knocking. Managers called, talent scouts emailed, invitations arrived with promises that sounded too big to trust. Global tour, instant success, once in a lifetime. Elijah's grandmother listened politely, then said no, again, and again, and again, not because she feared opportunity, but because she feared loss. Celeste watched the storm from afar. She recognized the signs. She had lived them. Fame doesn't arrive gently. It rushes in, demanding pieces of you before you realize what you're giving away. She remembered herself at 17, the contracts she didn't read, the smiles she learned to wear, the songs that slowly stopped sounding like her. And Elijah still sounded like himself. That scared her, because the industry doesn't know what to do with something it can't control. Celeste invited Elijah and his grandmother to her home, not a mansion but a quiet place by the water. No assistants, no agents, just tea and honesty. I won't lie to you, Celeste said. The world will try to shape him. Elijah's grandmother nodded. We know. They'll praise him, Celeste continued, and then they'll pressure him. Elijah listened carefully. What happens if I say no? He asked. Celeste met his eyes. Then you keep your voice, she said. But you walk a harder road. Elijah didn't hesitate. I've walked hard roads before. They agreed on one thing. One performance. No contracts. No obligations. Just a chance for Elijah to sing again, on his own terms. The venue was modest, the crowd smaller, but the atmosphere, electric. When Elijah stepped onto the stage alone, the room quieted, not with doubt, but with respect. He didn't look nervous. He looked ready. He sang a song he wrote himself. About his mother, about nights without light, about hope that doesn't shout, but waits. By the final note, no one was standing. They were frozen. There was applause. But more than that, there was silence afterward. The kind that lingers. The kind that means people are afraid to break what they just felt. Backstage, Elijah smiled. Not wide, not proud, just peaceful. That felt right, he said. Celeste nodded. That's how you know. But peace doesn't last long in loud places. Articles appeared. Some praised Elijah. Others questioned him. Too young, too emotional, needs polish. One headline stung Celeste deeply. Raw talent isn't enough forever. She showed it to Elijah gently. He read it, then handed the phone back. Maybe, he said, but forever doesn't worry me. Years passed, not rushed, not forced. Elijah grew taller, his voice deepened, but the soul behind it stayed intact. He performed selectively, he studied music, he lived. Celeste watched him become something rare. Not a product, a person. 5 years after that first night, they stood on the same grand stage again. Same chandeliers, same balconies, different energy. This time, Celeste didn't invite Elijah up. He walked out on his own. The crowd rose instantly, not because he was famous, but because they remembered. They sang together one last time. Not teacher and student, not legend and newcomer, but equals. When the final note faded, Celeste stepped back and let Elijah take the center. The applause wasn't thunderous. It was steady, earned, enduring. That night taught everyone something simple. True voices don't need permission. They don't need polish to matter. They don't fade when they're honest. They grow. Fame didn't arrive for Elijah like a storm. It arrived like a sunrise. Slow, steady, unavoidable. He turned 18 without a viral explosion, without flashy debuts, without headlines screaming his name. Instead, he had something stronger, trust. People trusted his voice. They trusted his silence. They trusted the way he disappeared between performances to live a life that didn't revolve around applause. He attended a small arts college on a scholarship, not because it was prestigious, but because it allowed him to stay close to home. Close to his grandmother, close to the place where his voice was born. Elijah studied music theory, history, and composition, but he also studied people. He volunteered at community centers, teaching children how to sing, not for stages, but for themselves. Your voice doesn't belong to the world, he told them. It belongs to you first. Some of those kids didn't have perfect pitch, but they had something else. Courage. And Elijah recognized it immediately. One evening, Elijah received a letter forwarded from an old theater. No return address. Inside was a short note written in careful handwriting. That night changed me too. Thank you for reminding me who I was. No name. He didn't need one. Elijah smiled and folded the letter gently, placing it beside a photograph of his mother. At 22, Elijah wrote a song he never planned to release. It wasn't catchy, it wasn't polished, it was quiet, it was about holding on when no one is watching. He performed it once, at a local benefit. Someone recorded it, someone shared it. This time, Elijah didn't resist. He allowed it. The song spread not because it was marketed, but because people recognized themselves in it. Nurses listened after long shifts. Fathers played it in empty cars. Students heard it late at night. No flashy visuals, just a voice telling the truth. The world didn't crown Elijah a star. They called him something else. Real. Years later, Elijah returned to the Grand Theater, not as a guest, as a headliner, but he made one request. No opening act, no orchestra, just one microphone, and silence. The audience agreed. When he walked onto the stage, he didn't bow. He stood, still, grounded. He sang the song his mother used to hum. The same melody, different strength. The audience listened, not because they were told to, but because they wanted to remember something they had forgotten. In the front row sat his grandmother, older now, smaller, but smiling. As Elijah sang, he realized something. This wasn't about proving anything, not to the singer who first invited him, not to the industry, not even to the crowd. It was about honoring every quiet night, every small room, every unseen moment. Elijah never became the loudest name in music, and he didn't want to. Instead, he became something rarer. A reminder that voices don't need permission, that stages don't define worth, that being heard starts with being honest. Years from now, young singers would speak his name, not because he dominated charts, but because he made them brave enough to sing. On the anniversary of that first night, Elijah stood alone on a small stage at a school auditorium. No cameras, no headlines, just children. He handed the microphone to a shy boy in the front row and smiled. Sing, he said softly. The world is listening, even when it's quiet. If this story stayed with you, stay connected with Black Inside 2.0. Here, we tell stories that don't fade when the music stops.